Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to Creative Grandma's channel. Today's crochet tutorial is for this adorable little princess baby dress. Now this dress I did do in 4 different sizes, and I have 4 different samples to show you of different ways you can crochet the dress and accent that dress with ribbons or lace. So first, let's go over what yarn I used to make the dress. I used this new Premier Afternoon cotton. This is 100% Egyptian Giza mercerized cotton. It comes in 136 yard, 125 meters, 1.75 ounces, 50 gram skeins. This is color pink, color number 2011-05 pink, and I also used a white. Now this yarn is made in Turkey. It is a number 3 lightweight cotton yarn. It's machine wash warm, lay flat to dry. So very nice yarn. I enjoyed working with it. Great stitch definition. Now for this tutorial, you can choose whichever colors you want. You're going to need a main color and you're going to need an accent color. Now I made 4 samples and I made all 4 different sizes so I could show you different ways of how the dress looks using different accents, different laces, and different colorways. Now this is the first one. This is size newborn. And this was made using the pink, and then I just used that white as the trim. So this is the front. Now I did not sew my buttons on yet, and this is the back. So then you're going to sew a button here in the middle and then one down here. So that is the back of the dress. So again, that's the newborn size. Then I made it in the 6-month size, and I just used a little tiny floral trim, and all my trims I found at Joann Fabrics. So they have a great selection if you're looking for just a little bit of lace and trim work. So when you look at the newborn, I used just white on the top, but then on the bottom I just added an extra round of that main color and brought it down underneath that white just for a little bit different look. Now if you want to make your dress a little bit longer, you can do so. You can just repeat these 2 round repeats and just make your dress longer and then put the edging on when you get to the bottom of the dress. So that's the only difference. Then I made the 9-month size, and I chose that beautiful butter yellow, and then I found this beautiful little daisy lace trim at Joann Fabrics, and I just thought it accented the dress perfectly with the yellow matching the yellow and the white matching the trim. Now on this border I did all 3 rounds in white. I didn't bring the yellow back out to the outside edge, but you can choose to do that if you wish. So now for the size 12-month dress, I wanted to show you what it might look like if maybe you wanted to make a christening gown. You could take this, make the skirt a lot longer if you wish. You can get some decorative lace and trim the yoke portion of the dress. And then I chose this little fringy type ruffle. I just thought it was pretty to go across the waistline to drape down over the dress. But they have so many beautiful laces and ribbons. There's so many possibilities. Now I do think that this might have looked a little bit prettier if I used a color border, but I wanted you to see what it would look like with all white, just an all white solid color dress. And I think it takes away a little bit with everything being the same color, but it just depends on what you want to make. So then on the border I just did all the trim work using the same color. So that is the size 12 months. Now for the tutorial today, I'm just going to show you how to make the basic dress, and then it's up to you to figure out how you want to decorate your dress when you get it finished. So this is what we're making. So now I just want to go over a little bit about the different sizes and the measurements. Now, when you look at the measurements for the different sizes, you have to remember that each baby is different. Each baby will have different measurements, and one size might not be the perfect size for the baby. So you may want to look at the measurements and determine which size is the appropriate size for the baby you want to make the dress for, and then match it up to the chest measurements, the waist measurements, and then the finished length. So now let's go over the material list of what you're going to need for this pattern today. Now I'm only doing the newborn size in this crochet tutorial, so you're going to need 2 skeins of a main color, and you're going to need 1 skein of an accent color. So if you decide to purchase the PDF pattern for all 4 sizes, then it's going to tell you you're going to need 3 skeins of a main color, 1 skein of an accent color for the 6 months, 3 skeins of a main color and 1 skein of an accent color for the 9 months. For the 12 months, you're going to need 5 skeins of a main color and 1 skein of an accent color. Now for the dress trim, that is totally up to you. Now for the newborn, I use 3 ribbon rose appliques, which I think is plenty to go across the yoke. You can choose to use more or less depending on what ribbon roses you choose. You can choose lace trim. You can choose maybe some beadwork. You are going to need matching thread for whatever trim work you use, a sewing needle, a yarn needle to weave in those ends, and then 3 to 5 small flat buttons to match the color of the dress. Now for the newborn size, I place 3 buttonholes, so you would only need 3 buttons for the newborn size. The other size dresses, the amount of buttons you need is determined by how many buttons you want to put on the back. And then last but not least, you're going to need a crochet hook, a 5mm or a US H8 crochet hook. Now the one thing I want to point out is on the yarn label, most of the time you use the crochet hook that's recommended on the label, but I wanted my dress to look lacier. Now this is saying they recommend a size F5, but I really jumped my hook size up because, again, I wanted that lacier look. So I am using a 5mm US H8. So if you're wondering why did I use a larger hook, it's because I wanted the lacier look for the dress. So now it's time to begin our dress. So grab your yarn, grab your hook, and let's get this project started. Now to work our little dress, we're going to be working in rows. We're going to be working back and forth and back and forth, creating our top yoke. And then we're going to make our waistline, which creates our armholes. And then we're going to finish by working the skirt of the dress. So it's work from the top down. So go ahead and grab your yarn and hook, and let's get this project started. So I already have my pink yarn attached to my hook, or you can use whichever color you prefer. Now you can use whichever method you prefer to attach your yarn to your hook. I just used a double knot, and I'm also using a size H8 or 5mm crochet hook. Now I do want to remind everyone this video is in USA crochet terminology. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're working on the newborn size, and we're going to begin with a chain of 43. You're going to yarn over your hook and pull it through the loop on your hook. This creates your first chain. The loop on your hook does not count as a chain. Yarn over, pull through, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Continue until you have 43 chains, and I'll be back and we'll start row 1. I have my 43 chains made, and now we're going to start row 1. Row 1, we're going to work a basic single crochet row. We're going to skip that first chain, insert into the second chain from hook, yarn over, pull through that chain. You have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. You just made a single crochet. Single crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and continue and work one single crochet in each chain across to the end of your chain, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of row 1. I have one chain remaining, so I'm just going to insert into that last chain and work a single crochet. Now, if you're new to crocheting, you're going to want to put a stitch marker into your last stitch, and then you're going to go back to the beginning of the row, and you'll want to put a stitch marker in your very first stitch. So when you look at your work, just look for that first little teardrop and place your stitch marker right in that first stitch. And what this does when you're new to crocheting is when you're working back across the next row, it's going to tell you where your last stitch is. And what that does is it lets you know where your last stitch is so you don't make any mistakes in the beginning or ending of the row. So this is what row 1 is going to look like, just a simple single crochet row. Looks a little lacier because we're using a larger size hook. You should have a total of 42 single crochet when you're done with row 1. So now we're getting ready to start row 2. Row 2, we're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. Now this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to change and we're now going to work in half double crochets. You're going to skip that beginning chain 1. You're going to yarn over your hook, insert into that very first stitch going under both of those top 2 loops, yarn over, pull back through that stitch, and you're going to have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook, and this creates a half double crochet. I'll show you one more time. You're going to yarn over, insert into the next stitch, and make sure you go under both of those top 2 loops, yarn over, pull back through that stitch. You have 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So now you're just going to repeat and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across, making sure you're going under both of those top 2 loops. Half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, continue and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 2. I'm over at the end of row 2. I have 1 stitch remaining, so if you're new you should have a stitch marker in this stitch, and you can see that little teardrop. So I'm going to work a half double crochet into that last stitch of row 2. So row 2 is finished. This is what your work should look like, and it's not curving yet, but we're going to start increasing our stitches with the next row, and you should have a total of 42 half double crochet at the end of row 2. So let's go ahead and begin row 3. To begin row 3, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. Now for row 3, we're going to switch back and work single crochet. Now when you're working a half double crochet, when you're on the wrong side of the work, it's going to look like this is your front and this is your back stitch. So you got to make sure that you're turning your work and you're grabbing the top 2 loops and not those side 2 loops. So again, when you look at your work, this is what you're going to see. You need to turn your work and catch these top 2 loops, which the first loop is right here on top and the back loop is over here behind your work. So make sure that you're really turning your work and getting into those top 2 loops. And again, make sure you move your stitch markers up to the first stitch. So we're going to skip the beginning chain 1 and we're going to work a single crochet into each of the first 3 stitches. So skip the chain 1, insert into the first stitch, yarn over and pull through. You have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. We're going back to a single crochet. Single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. So when you look at your work, you should have 3 single crochets so far. So now we're ready to start our repeat. Our repeat, we're going to work 2 single crochet into the next stitch and 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, and we're going to do that a total of 12 times or across to the last 3 stitches. So let's go ahead and start our repeat. You're going to work 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1, insert back into that same stitch, work your second single crochet. Single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. 1, insert into the next stitch, work a single crochet. That is the end of the repeat. That's 1 of 12. Now we're going to do the repeat again. 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1, insert back into the same stitch, work your second single crochet. Single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. 1, insert into the next stitch, work a single crochet. That is the end of the repeat. That is 2 of 12. So let's do it one more time and then you can continue on your own. 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1, insert back into that same stitch, work your second single crochet. Single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And that is the end of the repeat. That is 3 of 12. So go ahead and continue. You're going to work 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, and you're going to do that 9 more times. And then I'll meet you at the end of the row and you should have 3 stitches remaining. I'm over at the end of round 3. After you did your 12 repeats, you should have 3 stitches remaining. We're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the last 3 stitches. Insert into the next stitch, work a single crochet. Single crochet into the next stitch, making sure you're turning your work and going into the top 2 loops. So now if you're new to crocheting, you should have a stitch marker into this stitch here. So turn your work, insert under those top 2 loops of that last stitch, work a single crochet. So I'm going to zoom out and show you how now it's going to start curving. This is forming the neckline. So when you lay your work down, you're going to see it's starting to have the curve. And we just increased our stitches. So now you should have a total of 54 single crochet at the end of row 3. So make sure you move your stitch markers up to that last stitch and then to the first stitch. So now it's time to begin row 4. Row 4, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. Now row 4, we're going to switch back and we're going back to the half double crochet. We're going to skip that beginning chain 1. You're going to yarn over, insert under the top 2 loops of that first stitch, yarn over and pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Again, we're going back to the half double crochet. So go ahead and move your stitch marker up, put it right in the top of this beginning half double crochet. So now we're just going to work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across. Again, you're going to yarn over, insert under the top 2 loops of the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and again turn your work towards you so you can see those top 2 loops. Work a half double crochet. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and again you're always working under the top 2 loops. Half double crochet into the next stitch, turn your work towards you, insert under the top 2 loops, work a half double crochet. So go ahead and you're going to work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 4. I'm over at the end of row 4. I have 1 stitch remaining. You should have a stitch marker into this last stitch. So go ahead and work a half double crochet into that last stitch. So when you look at your work, you're going to have a total of 54 half double crochet across your row. And this is what it looks like so far. So now we're going to go ahead and start row 5. So make sure you move your stitch marker up to that first stitch. And with row 5, we're going to start increasing with a few more stitches. So let's go ahead and begin. You're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. For row 5, we're going back to the single crochet stitch. We're alternating a single crochet row with a half double crochet row and then back to a single crochet row. So we're skipping that beginning chain 1 and we're going to work a single crochet into this first stitch, going under both of those top 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, you have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through all 2 loops on your hook. You just made your single crochet. You're going to single crochet into the next stitch. So now we're going to start our repeat, and this repeat we're just going to increase 1 stitch 13 times across the row. So let's go ahead and begin the repeat. Very simple to do. You're going to work 2 single crochet into this next stitch, and again make sure you're turning your work towards you and going under the top 2 loops and not going into those side loops. So let's begin the repeat. You're going to work 2 single crochet under the top 2 loops of the next stitch, 1 and 2. Now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. Insert into the next stitch, work a single crochet. That's 1. Single crochet into the next stitch. That's 2. And single crochet into the next stitch, and that's 3. That is 1 repeat of 13. So let's do it again. You're going to work 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1, insert back into that same stitch, work your second single crochet. Now we're going to single crochet 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. Single crochet into the next stitch, that's 1, single crochet into the next stitch, that's 2, and single crochet into the next stitch, and that's 3. That is our second repeat of 13. So let's do it one more time together, and then you can continue on your own. This again is the start of the repeat. 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1, insert back into that same stitch, work your second single crochet. Now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. Single crochet into the next stitch, that's 1, single crochet into the next stitch, that's 2, single crochet into the next stitch, and that's 3. And that is the end of the repeat, and that is your third repeat of 13. So go ahead and continue. You're going to work 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches, and you're going to do that 10 more times. I'll meet you at the end of row 5. I'm over at the end of row 5. Again, I'm ending my last repeat with a single crochet into that last stitch. But make sure you're really turning, because this is where it looks like you should go. But when you turn your work, you're going to notice your 2 loops are back here. So make sure you're getting into the right correct loops. Insert into those 2 loops. Work your last single crochet of the last repeat. So you can see here's our 2 together, and then we worked 1, 2, 3 single crochet into those last 3 stitches, ending our last repeat. So let me lay this out and show you how it looks now. So this is what your work looks like now, and you should have a total of 67 single crochet. Now it's time to begin row 6. We're going to start with the chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. We're going to skip this beginning chain 1, and we're going back and starting to work the half double crochets. You're going to yarn over, skip that beginning chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of that first stitch, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. You're now working half double crochets. You're going to work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and remember, go under both of those top 2 loops. Half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, continue and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 6. I'm over at the end of row 6. I have 1 stitch remaining, and I like to show where I begin and where I end a row when I'm working. So I'm just working 1 half double crochet right into that last stitch, and you should have a stitch marker in that stitch if you're new to crocheting. So row 6 is finished. This is what your work should look like, and you should have a total of 67 half double crochet in row 6. Now it's time to begin row 7. So row 7, we're going to chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. Row 7, we're working single crochets. We're going to skip that beginning chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of that first half double crochet stitch, work a single crochet. And again, when you're working on the wrong side of those half double crochets, I just want to make it very clear because my new crocheters, I don't want you get confused with this side of the stitch. Turn that work towards you, and these are your top 2 loops, not the side loop. Turn your work. Single crochet under the top 2 loops of the next stitch. Again, turn your work towards you, insert under the top 2 loops, work a single crochet. Single crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 7. I'm over at the end of row 7, and again I like to show you where to place that last stitch. Again, we're working in those half double crochets, so you want to make sure you're turning your work, because the first place you want to put it is here, and that's wrong. You really need to turn it and find your back 2 stitches. Here is where your top 2 loops really are. So make sure you insert under the top 2 loops. Just make sure you turn your work, find those top 2 loops, work your single crochet, and then move your stitch markers up to the first and last stitch of the row. So let me lay this out one more time and you can see what your work looks like. Again, this is what your work looks like, and you should have a total of 67 single crochet at the end of row 7. Now we're ready to begin row 8. For row 8, we're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. For row 8, we're going back to working the half double crochet. So we're going to skip the chain 1 space, yarn over, insert under the top 2 loops of that first stitch, work a half double crochet. Yarn over, pull through the stitch. You have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Now we're going to work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yarn over, insert under the top 2 loops of that next stitch, work a half double crochet. That's 1 of 5. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 2 of 5. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 3 of 5. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 4 of 5. Then half double crochet into the next stitch, and that is 5 of 5. Now we're ready to start our repeat. So our repeat for this row, we're going to work 2 half double crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. So let's go ahead and begin the repeat. If you need help, you'll just click back on the video. So let's begin. 2 half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 1. Work a second half double crochet into the same stitch. Now we're going to work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 1. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 2. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 3. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 4. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and that's 5. And that is the end of the repeat. And we need to do that a total of 10 times. So that was 1 of 10. So let's do it again. Again, this is the start of the repeat. 2 half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 1. Half double crochet back into that same stitch. And that's 2. Now we're going to work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 1. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 2. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 3. Half double crochet into the next stitch. That's 4. And half double crochet into the next stitch, and that's 5. And that is the end of the repeat, and that is 2 of 10. So go ahead and continue. You're going to repeat 2 half double crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Go ahead and repeat that 8 more times around, and I'll meet you at the last stitch of row 8. I'm over at the end of row 8. I just finished my 10th repeat, and now you should have 1 stitch remaining. So we're going to end the row with 1 half double crochet into that very last stitch. Row 8 is finished. I'm just going to fasten off my work, and again, I like to leave that really long length, and that gives me a lot of working room to weave those ends in and make sure they're really secure. So this is what the top of the dress looks like so far. So basically this is how you start the baby dress, and then as we assemble the dress, this gets folded in half, and this is what creates the top of the dress. That will be the front, and that will be the back. So again, this is the end of row 8. This is where we fastened off. This is where we ended the row fastened off. So you want to keep your piece with your fastened off side on the left hand side, and we're not going to turn our work. So let me explain the next step of making our baby dress, because sometimes when you see these baby clothes, they might look complicated, but they're really quite simple if you just take it step by step. So now what we're going to do is on the right hand section of our top of our dress on the yoke, we're going to work a section here, and then we're going to leave a space open for the armhole, and then we're going to work the center section, and then we're going to leave a space open for the armhole, and then we're going to work a section on the left hand side. So when you fold this in half again, you're going to create your armhole, and then these will be the back two halves of the dress, and then your armholes, and then the front of your dress. So now you want to grab yourself some stitch markers. You can use a piece of yarn, you can use stitch markers, whichever way you want to mark your stitches. And we're going to mark out each section that we're going to be working, the side section, the front section, and the other side section. Then we're going to be working in rows back and forth and doing each section separately, which creates a very easy pattern to make. So let's go ahead and mark those stitches. Now, before I put my stitch markers in place, I want to remind everyone, I forgot to mention our new stitch count. We should have 77 half double crochet around at the end of row 8. So now I'm just using some basic stitch markers. These are the Clover split ring markers. You can buy these at any of your craft stores. So this is where the end of row 8 is. So this is where you fastened off, and that should be in the bottom left hand of your work. So we just want to go back. Do not turn your work. Just go back to the beginning of row 8 right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a stitch marker in the 13th stitch. So I'm just going to turn this. And again, you're going back to the beginning of row 8, and we're going to count over to the 13th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So I'm just going to place a stitch marker into the back loop of that 13th stitch. And because I looked away when I was grabbing my stitch marker, I'm just going to do a double count and make sure. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13. Now I'm placing my stitch marker in the back loop. Next, we're going to place a stitch marker in the 28th stitch. So this is stitch number 13. So let's count to stitch number 28. So that's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. So I'm going to go ahead and place a stitch marker in the 28th stitch right into the back loop of that stitch. Now we're going to count over and put a stitch marker in our 65th stitch. So again, this is 28, so 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. I'm going to count by twos now. 52, 54, 56, 58, and 60. 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. So in the 65th stitch, go ahead and place a stitch marker. So when you look at your work, this is going to be the top right side of your yoke, and we're working from the first stitch over to our stitch marker. These stitches will remain unworked for our armhole. And then we're going to work across the center. And I didn't put a stitch marker here because I'm going to tell you how many stitches to work over. I just put this here so you knew where to start your stitches. And then this is where you start your stitches to work the left side of our yoke. So I'm just going to attach my yarn to my hook, and I just used a double knot to attach my yarn. I tie one knot, and then I tie a second knot, and I tell everyone this is how my gram taught me, and it's just the way I do it. So you can use whichever method you prefer to join your yarn. So again, you fastened off here at row 8, so you're going back to the beginning of row 8. You want to come to the bottom right hand side of your work and just swing your work around. So now we're going to go up to the very first stitch. So this time we have the right side of our work facing. So when you made those half double crochets, your top 2 loops are right here. They're right in front of you. So since we're not on the wrong side, you're not going to turn it all the way over. Your front 2 stitches are right here, your top 2 loops. So we're going to be working into the back loop. Now I'm going to join my yarn in a different way this time. I'm not going to attach it to my hook. I'm just going to pull it through the back loop. So when you look at your work, here's the front loop, and I just want to go into this back loop. Now I'm just going to pull my yarn through, but I'm going to leave a little bit longer length. This way it allows me to knot it and secure it after my work is finished. So just pull your new color through, and you're going to chain 1. You're going to go back into that same back loop and work a single crochet. Now I'm going to hold the piece of yarn that I started with right against my work and crochet right over it. You're going to insert into the back loop of that next stitch, work a single crochet. Single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. And we're going to do that in each stitch across to our first marker. Insert into the back loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet. Single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. So now I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet in the back loop of each stitch across to that very first stitch marker. So now I'm over at my stitch marker, and I'm going right into the back loop of that very same stitch that has the stitch marker. Now I did forget to mention this will be row 9. So when you look at your work, you're going to have 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 single crochet for row 9. So I just wanted to show you why we're working into the back loops. So here you can see that we worked in the back loops, which leaves this loop open here where we're going to come back when we get our dress made, and we can use the front loops, and we're going to be putting this trim work into the front loop. So it leaves that open to put our trim work on top of the rows below. So let's go ahead and move on to row 10. We're going to chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. For row 10, we're going to skip that beginning chain 1, and we're going to work a half double crochet under the top 2 loops of that very first stitch, and then work a half double crochet in each stitch across to the end of the row. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and just continue working 1 half double crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 10. I'm over at the last stitch of row 10, and I'm going to work a half double crochet into the top 2 loops of that last stitch. And I did forget to mention, if you're new to crocheting, you might want to put those stitch markers in the very first and very last stitch of the row, and then just move your stitch markers up as you crochet. So now row 10 is finished, and you should have a total of 13 half double crochet across your work. Now it's time to do row 11. We're going to begin with a chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip the beginning chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of that first half double crochet, work a single crochet. You're going to single crochet in each stitch across to the end of the row. Single crochet into the next stitch, and again we're going under both of those top 2 loops of the stitch, work a single crochet. So go ahead and work 1 single crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 11. I'm over at the end of row 11. I have 1 stitch remaining, and again, if you're new to crocheting, please use the stitch marker. So much easier to tell where your ending stitch is. So here's our ending stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet into the top 2 loops of that ending stitch. So row 11 is finished, and this completes this section of our top yoke. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. Again, I like to leave a longer length, and that's just so much easier when you're using a yarn needle to secure your work and to really weave it in and out and really make it look nice with that longer length. So now, since the top right side of our yoke is finished, I'm just going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker from that section. So now we fastened off, so you fastened off here at the top, and you do not turn your work. You just fastened off, so this is how you're going to lay it, exactly where you fastened it off. And now we're going to skip these stitches and move over to our next stitch marker, which should be in your 28th stitch. So now I'm going to attach my yarn in the same manner. I'm just going to leave a longer length. I'll say that's about 6 to 8 inches. And I'm not attaching it to my hook. I'm just going to insert my hook into the back loop of that stitch marker in the 28th stitch. And I'm just going to pull my new color through, and then I'm going to lay this length right against my work and crochet over it. We're going to start with a chain 1, and this is row 9 of our center front. We're going to single crochet into that same stitch into the back loop only. Now we're going to work 1 single crochet into the back loop of each of the next 22 stitches. So that's 1 single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. That's 2 single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. That's 3 single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch, and that's 4. So go ahead and single crochet into the back loop of the next 18 stitches, and I'll meet you there. I just finished my 18 single crochet. So when you look at your work, the total you should have for row 9 for the center front is you should have a total of 23 single crochet stitches. So start counting from the very first stitch. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23 stitches. So now we're going to go ahead and start row 10. We're going to begin with a chain 1, and this is row 10 of the center front. You're going to turn your work. We're going to skip that beginning chain 1, work a half double crochet under the top 2 loops of that very first single crochet stitch, work a half double crochet. Half double crochet into the next stitch. Half double crochet into the next stitch. So go ahead and continue and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across to that stitch marker, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of row 10. Now this is my end from crocheting over it. I'll secure this and knot it and weave it back in with my yarn needle later. You should have a total of 23 half double crochet across your work. So when you start at this very first stitch, you're going to count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23. And again, if you're new to crocheting, make sure you move those stitch markers up to the first stitch and the last stitch to help you know where those rows begin and stop. So now we have one more row to go for the center front. We're going to start row 11. We're going to chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. You're going to skip the beginning chain 1, insert into the top of that very first half double crochet, work a single crochet. You're going to work 1 single crochet under the top 2 loops of each half double crochet across. Single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, continue and single crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 11. I'm over at the end of row 11. I have 1 stitch to go, so when you look at your work, make sure you turn it towards you, and you'll see your top 2 loops towards the back. So make sure you turn it and see those top 2 loops, insert underneath the top 2 loops, work a single crochet. And if you're moving your stitch markers up, there should be a stitch marker in that stitch to help you. So the center section is finished. You're going to have a total of 23 single crochets. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. And I chain 2, pull up my hook, pull the yarn out, grab the yarn, pinch, pull down, and it creates a secure knot. And then again, I'll weave all these ends in on the back of my work and you won't see them. So now when you look at your work, this is the center section we just fastened off. You just fastened off here, and you do not turn your work. You fastened off, you're going to leave it right where it is. So we have our right section finished. We have our front center section. So now just turn your work until you get to your last stitch marker, and then we're going to join our yarn into the back loop of this stitch. So now, since our center section is done, I'm just going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker. And now we're going to work our last section, the left-hand side section. So I'm going to join my yarn here in this last stitch marker. So again, you do not turn your work. We're just going to come over to our last stitch marker. And again, I'm going to leave about a 6 to 8 inch length of yarn. I'm just going to insert my hook into that back loop and pull my yarn through, and then just work my stitches right over that piece of yarn. We're going to start, and again, this stitch marker is in the 65th stitch if you're counting from the right to the left side of row 8, and we're going to begin with a chain 1. You're going to insert back into that same back loop and work a single crochet. We're going to work 1 single crochet into the back loop of each stitch across to the very end. Insert into the back loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet. Insert into the back loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet. And continue and work 1 single crochet into the back loop of each stitch across to the end of the row, and I'll meet you there. So I'm over at the end of row 9 of the last section, the left-hand side section, and I'm just going to work a single crochet into the back loop of that very last stitch. And then all the ends that you're seeing, I'll weave them all in later. So now we're going to start row 10. We're going to begin with the chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. We're going to skip the beginning chain 1 and work a half double crochet under the top 2 loops of that first single crochet stitch. Now we're going to work 1 half double crochet under the top 2 loops of each stitch across. So insert into the next stitch, work a half double crochet. half double crochet into the next stitch, and continue and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch across the left hand side section, and I'll meet you at the end of row 10. I'm over at the end of row 10. I have 1 stitch remaining, so I'm going to work a half double crochet into that last stitch, going under the top 2 loops of that last single crochet, work a half double crochet. So when you look at your work, you're going to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 half double crochet across row 10. So now it's time to begin row 11. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. For row 11, we're working single crochet stitches. We're going to skip the beginning chain 1, insert under the top 2 loops of that first half double crochet stitch, and single crochet. Single crochet into the next stitch. Remember to turn your work and go under those top 2 loops, work a single crochet. Single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next, work 1 single crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 11. I'm over at the end of row 11. I have 1 stitch remaining, and I'm going to work a single crochet into that very last stitch. So when you look at your work, again, you should have a total of 13 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my work. And it's always better to have too much yarn when you fasten off than not enough. So I'm going to go back over here and just take that stitch marker out of my work, and this is what your work should look like. So you have your top yoke, you have your right side section, your center section, and then your left side section. So now what we're going to do is, you can see we fastened off, and all of our places where we fastened off are at the top of the left side. So we're going to turn our work. So now what I'm going to do is, we're going to start in the first stitch of the first section on the right hand side of the work. So I'm just going to leave about a 6 to 8 inch length, and again we're going into that right hand corner, the first stitch in the right hand corner, and where I fastened off, I'm going to pull this over and just lay it up against my stitches and hold that right with the strand of yarn I'm going to pull through. So insert under the top 2 loops of that first stitch, pull tight on where you fastened off, and then just pull your new color through where you're joining that yarn. You're going to chain 1, and then I'm going to insert back into that first stitch, and I'm leaving my strands over top of my hook, and then I'm going to work my single crochet right over top of those strands of yarn. So now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across this section. Insert under the top 2 loops of the next stitch, lay those ends on top your hook, and then single crochet over those ends and through that stitch. Again, we're just going to repeat that process. Insert into the next stitch, make sure your ends are right up against the stitch, work over top of the ends, and through that stitch work a single crochet. So we're just going to single crochet in each stitch across this one section. So I'm going to work a few more stitches over top of these ends, and then I'm going to let them hang in the back, and then I will secure them and weave them in. So I'm just going to fold them under now and get them out of the way, and I'm going to finish single crocheting across the remaining stitches in this section. So I'm over at the end of the first section, and we should have a total of 13 stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13. Now we're going to chain 2 for the armhole, and don't make these too tight because we're going to work stitches into those 2 chains. So now we're just going to jump over to the center section. So you're just going to fold this section together and come over to the first stitch of this center. I'm going to grab where I fastened off and hold it right up against my work and work over that end, and that helps weave in the end as you're crocheting. So tighten up your loop and then work a single crochet into that first stitch of the center section. Now you're going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across the center section. And again, I'm holding that piece of yarn where I fastened off right up against my stitches and crocheting right over it. So work 1 single crochet in each stitch across the center section. Again, I'm working right over that end and weaving it in as I crochet across. So go ahead and work 1 single crochet in each stitch across that front center section, and I'll meet you when you get to the end of the front center section. I just worked 1 single crochet in each stitch across the center section. You had the chain 2 for the armholes, and then you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23 stitches across the front center of your yoke. Now we're going to chain 2 and again make them kind of loose. So now we're going to skip this whole entire unworked section, and we're going to come up to the very first stitch at the top of this next section. Insert your hook into that first stitch, and again I'm just going to hold where I fastened off against my work and crochet right over that. You're going to tighten up your loop and work a single crochet into that first stitch. Now I'm going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across this last section. So I have just a couple more stitches to go, and then I'm at the end. So I'm over at the end of row 12. This is the yoke finishing row, and then here's my last stitch. So insert under the top 2 loops of that last stitch and work a single crochet. Row 12 is finished. This is what your work is going to look like. Please excuse these ends. I'm going to weave them all in later once I get my dress done, and they'll be out of the way. You won't even know they're there. But you can see how we worked the right side. We worked an armhole, the front center, the armhole, and then the left side. So now we're just going to take and start working in rounds for the skirt. So we're still working from the top down, and then we're just going to be working round and round to do that skirt. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the start of the skirt. So we're going to start this as round 1 of the skirt. Now for this round, we're going to be working in the back loops only. We're going to chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. We're going to skip the beginning chain 1, and we're going to half double crochet into the back loop only of the very first stitch. Half double crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. Half double crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. Now I'm going to work a half double crochet into the back loop of each stitch across to that first chain 2 space. So I'm going to work this section right along with you, and again we're working into the back loop only, and we're working 1/2 double crochet in the back loop of each stitch and each chain. So when you get to the chain 2 space, make sure you're not twisted. Here we have one more stitch, so I'm going to work my 1/2 double crochet into the back loop of that last stitch of this section. And then we have our chain 2 space. So we're going to work a 1/2 double crochet in the back loop of each one of those 2 chains at the armhole. There's one. 1/2 double crochet into the back loop of that second chain, and then you're just going to start up again and work 1/2 double crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. So go ahead and continue and work 1/2 double crochet into the back loop only of each stitch and each chain space at the armholes around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 1. I'm over at the end of round 1 of our skirt. I have 1 stitch remaining, so I'm going to work a 1/2 double crochet into the back loop of that last stitch around. So now we want to join to our beginning 1/2 double crochet that's clear over here. So you're just going to take the right hand corner and bring it to the back of your work and just bring it around to meet that last stitch that you made. So you're just bringing that right side over. So now the right side becomes the left side and the last stitch is on the right side. And now you're going to come over to the top of that beginning 1/2 double crochet. So if you're not sure, just take your fingers and pull it apart. And if you moved your stitch marker up, you'll have a stitch marker in the stitch. Go ahead and insert into the top of that 1/2 double crochet stitch and slip stitch. Round 1 is finished. So if you count your 1/2 double crochet stitches around, you're going to have a total of 53 1/2 double crochets of round 1 of your skirt. Now we're ready to begin round 2 of our skirt. We're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our beginning chain 5 will count as the first double crochet plus a chain 2. Now for this round, we worked our 1/2 double crochet so they're right side facing. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the front loop and we're going to be working in the 2 back loops. We're going to work a double crochet back into this first stitch. So yarn over the hook, skip the front loop, insert into the back loop, and then the loop right below. So you have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, you have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. So again, you have your chain 5, which counts as a double crochet, chain 2, and then a double crochet back into that stitch. Now we're ready to start our repeat. Again, this is the 1/2 double crochet with the right side facing because we didn't turn our work. So we're going to skip the front loop, work in the back loop, and then go down and work in the loop directly below. So what we're doing is we're creating a double ridge for the beginning of our skirt. So let's go ahead and start the repeat. You're going to double crochet into the back loop and then the loop directly below the back loop, work a double crochet. You're going to chain 2, yarn over, insert back into those 2 back loops, work a double crochet. Your V-stitch is made. So let's do it a couple times together. You're going to go to the next stitch, skip that front loop, and double crochet into the back loop, and then go into the loop below the back loop, work a double crochet. Chain 2, double crochet back into that same space. your V-stitch is made. Yarn over the hook, go to your next stitch. You're going to skip the front loop, insert into the back loop, and then insert underneath the loop directly below, work a double crochet. Chain 2, and then double crochet back into that same space. So let me show you one more time. Find your next stitch. You're going to yarn over, skip the front loop of the next stitch, insert under the back loop, and then the loop directly below, work a double crochet. Chain 2, and then double crochet back into that same space. And again, when you look at your work, we're just creating a double looped ridge to just accent the start of our skirt. So go ahead and continue. You're going to find your next stitch. You're going to skip the front loop, work a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet under the back loop, and then the loop directly below. And you're going to do that in each stitch around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 2. I'm over at the end of round 2 of our skirt on our baby dress, and if you look at your work, you're going to have a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet in the back 2 loops of each stitch around, and you should have a total of 53 V-stitches. So now we're going to come up and join with a slip stitch into the chain 3 of this beginning chain 5. So count up 1, 2, 3, insert your hook into the third chain of that beginning chain 5 and slip stitch. Round 2 is finished. So now we're ready to begin round 3. So round 3 and each additional round we're going to be working into the chain 2 spaces only of each V-stitch. So first we want to slip stitch into that first chain 2 space. Insert underneath the chain 2 space, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on your hook. And then this positions you right in the center of that chain 2 space to start your round. Now this round will be a little bit differently. We're working with single crochet. We're going to start with the chain 1. We're going to insert back into that chain 2 space, working under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back underneath and around the chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So this round we're working a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet V-stitch. Find your next chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So let's do it again. Find your next V-stitch, insert under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into the same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So let's do it one more time together. Find your next V-stitch. All you have to do is just pull those stitches, look for your chain 2 space, insert underneath the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So go ahead and continue. You're working a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into each chain 2 space around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 3. I'm over at the end of round 3. This is what your work looks like. We worked a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the chain 2 space of each V-stitch around, and now we're going to join with a slip stitch into the top of this beginning single crochet. Insert under the top 2 loops of that first single crochet stitch and slip stitch through the stitch and through the loop on your hook. So round 3 is finished. And now we're ready to begin round 4. So very simple pattern for the skirt. Again, we're always going to start in the first chain 2 space. So you're going to insert into the chain 2 space and slip stitch, and this gets you in the position of starting in the beginning chain 2 space. We're going to begin with the chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our beginning chain 5 counts as our first double crochet plus a chain 2. We're going to double crochet back into that same chain 2 space, and this forms our first V-stitch. Again, for all the remaining rounds, we're only working into the chain 2 space of each V-stitch around. So find your next single crochet V-stitch. We're working into that chain 2 space. Work a double crochet underneath and around the chain 2 space. Chain 2. And then double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. And that is going to be your repeat for this round. Find your next single crochet V-stitch. We're working into the chain 2 space. Double crochet underneath and around the chain 2 space, chain 2, and then double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. So I'll show you one more time and then you can continue on your own. Find your next single crochet V-stitch. We're working into the center chain 2 space, so if you need to, use your hook, open that space up. Double crochet underneath and around that chain 2 space, chain 2, and then double crochet back into that same chain 2 space. And that is the end of the repeat. So go ahead and work a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the chain 2 space of each single crochet V-stitch around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 4. I'm over at the end of round 4. This is what your skirt is looking like. We just did our double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the chain 2 space of each single crochet V-stitch around, and now we're over to the end of the round. We're going to join with the slip stitch into the third chain of this beginning chain 5. So count up 1, 2, 3, insert your hook into that third chain and slip stitch. Round 4 is finished. So to begin round 5, you're going to insert underneath the first chain 2 space, yarn over the hook, pull it back through that space and through the loop on your hook. Again, we're right in the center of that chain 2 space to start our next round. So for round 5, we're just going to repeat round 3. We're going to chain 1. You're going to insert back into that same space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same space, work a single crochet. Again, we're only working in the chain 2 spaces of each V-stitch. Find your next V-stitch, insert underneath and around that next chain 2 space of that next V-stitch, work a single crochet. Chain 2, single crochet back into that same chain 2 space. Find your next V-stitch, insert into the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. Let's do it one more time. Find your next V-stitch, insert underneath and around the chain 2 space, work a single crochet. You're going to chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So very easy round. So go ahead and work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in each chain 2 space around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 5. I'm over at the end of round 5. Again, this is what your work looks like. We have the double crochet V-stitch, the single crochet V-stitch, double crochet V-stitch, single crochet V-stitch, forming the pattern for our skirt. And now we're going to go ahead and join into that first single crochet of the round, insert under the top 2 loops of that stitch, and slip stitch. Yarn over, pull through the stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. Now I'm just going to pull a long loop up and show you the dress so far. So let me zoom out. So when you pick up your little dress, you can see how it's starting to form. Here is our yoke, and here is the start of our skirt. And then we're going to come back when we get the skirt all done and come up here and put our edging on. So this is what your work should look like so far. So now let's go back to the end of round 5. This is where you fastened off. So to continue on the skirt for rounds 6 through 13, you're going to click back on the video and you're going to repeat rounds 4 and round 5 4 more times. So again, rounds 6 through 13, you're going to repeat round 4 and round 5 4 more times. So if you need help, click back on the video. So again, you're just going to repeat rounds 4 and round 5 4 more times, and I'll meet you at the end of round 13. I'm over at the end of round 13. We repeated rounds 4 and rounds 5 4 more times, and you're ending with the single crochet chain 2 single crochet V-stitch round. And now we're going to join with the slip stitch in the top of that first single crochet stitch. Yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. So I'm just going to fasten off, and again, I fasten off a little bit longer length, and you can use whichever method you prefer to fasten off. So here's our little dress. So now we're going to add a couple rounds of the single crochet V-stitch as the trim in white. Now if you want your dress a little bit longer, then you can go ahead and repeat rounds 4 and round 5 to the length desired, but leave room for the trim work if you want a different color to edge your dress. So now I'm going to flip my dress back over, and I'm going back to where I fastened off on round 13. I'm going to grab my white, and then we'll start round 14. I attached my white to my hook with a double knot. So I'm going to join my yarn using the slip stitch through the loop on my hook method. Again, this is where we fastened off round 13, and you're going to insert right into the first chain 2 space of that first single crochet shell stitch. You're going to yarn over, pull through the chain 2 space, and pull through the loop on your hook. So now we're just going to repeat round 13. We're going to chain 1, insert back into that chain 2 space, work a single crochet. You're going to chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. Again, we're working a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the chain 2 space of each shell stitch around. Find your next single crochet shell, look for your chain 2 space in the center, insert your hook, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. Let's do it again. Find your next single crochet shell, insert underneath the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So let's do it one more time. You're going to find your next single crochet V-stitch, look for the chain 2 space in the middle, insert underneath that chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So go ahead and continue. You're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the chain 2 space of each V-stitch around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 14. I'm over at the end of round 14. We worked 1 single crochet, chain 2 single crochet in each chain 2 space of each V-stitch around, and now we're going to join into that first single crochet. Insert under the top 2 loops of that first single crochet and slip stitch. So now we're going to go ahead and do one more final round for the edging. We're going to insert our hook into that first chain 2 space of that first V-stitch and slip stitch. You're going to chain 1. You're going to single crochet back into that first chain 2 space, chain 2, and then insert back into that same space, work a single crochet. So we're just repeating what we did in the last round. Find your next single crochet V-stitch, insert under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, and then insert back into the same space, work a single crochet. Find your next single crochet V-stitch, insert under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space and work a single crochet. So go ahead and continue. You're going to work 1 single crochet, a chain 2, and 1 single crochet in the chain 2 space of each V-stitch around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 15. I'm over at the end of round 15. I just worked my second round of white single crochet V-stitches around, and now I'm over to the end, and I'm just going to join with a slip stitch into the top of that beginning single crochet. Yarn over, pull through that single crochet, and pull through the loop on your hook. So now we're all done with the skirt portion of our dress, so I'm just going to fasten off, and again, you can use whichever method you prefer to fasten off. So this is what our little dress looks like so far. We did the top, we'd come down, did the waistline, the skirt, and we edged it with the white. So now we're going to go back up to row 8 of our yoke, and we're going to do 2 rows of this border up into the front loops of row 8. So now what you want to do is you're going to take your dress. This is right side facing, top is up, the skirt is facing down. You want to take your little dress and just take it and flip it over so the top is now on the bottom and the bottom is on the top, and then you have your back opening. So we're going to return to the front loop of round 8. So if you're not sure where row 8 is, just go up to your armhole area here, and you're just going to follow those front loops right down row 8 to the very first stitch on the left hand side of the opening. So this is the right hand side and this is the left hand side. Now I already have my yarn attached to my hook, so we're going to go right into this first stitch. So let me zoom up. So you can place a stitch marker in there if you're afraid you're going to lose the spot when you're moving the dress around to attach your yarn. Go ahead and put a stitch marker in that stitch if it'll help you. So now I'm just going to pick up my dress, and again we're working into the front loops only of row 8. So here is your first stitch. It's kind of down on the side a little bit. Let me just turn this dress under so you can see better. I'm going to insert under the front loop of that very first stitch and slip stitch my new color and join that yarn. I'm going to chain 1 to start the round, and then I'm going to work a single crochet into that same front loop. You're going to chain 2, single crochet back into that same front loop. Now we're going to start our repeat. We're going to skip the next stitch, insert into the front loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same front loop, work a single crochet. That is the end of the repeat. So I'm going to work it a couple times with you. Skip the next stitch, insert into the front loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that front loop, work a single crochet. That is the end of the repeat. Again, you're going to skip the next stitch, insert into the front loop of the next stitch, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same front loop, work a single crochet. And that is the end of the repeat. So now you're just going to go ahead and repeat, skip the next stitch, work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the next stitch. You're going to repeat that around the row to the end of the row. Now, when you're working here, you're only going to have a front loop, and then it's going to transition to a double loop. So once you get over to the double loop, carry your stitches into the front loops only. You're going to need these back loops here for working around the armhole. So make sure you only go in the front loops when you're working that pattern around. So again, go ahead and continue, skip one stitch, work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the front loop of the next stitch, repeat that to the end of row 8, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of the row. We just worked one row of edging in the front loops of row 8 of the top of the dress, and now we're going to work one more row. So you need to turn your work. We're going to begin in the chain 2 space, so insert into the chain 2 space and work a slip stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull through that chain 2 and pull through the loop on your hook. To begin row 2 of the edging, we want to be in that chain 2 space. We're going to chain 1, insert back into that chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. Now we're just going to repeat and work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the chain 2 space of each single crochet V-stitch across to the end of the row. So let's begin. Find your next single crochet V-stitch, insert under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. Find your next single crochet V-stitch, insert under the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So let me show you one more time. Find your next single crochet V-stitch, insert into the chain 2 space, work a single crochet, chain 2, insert back into that same chain 2 space, work a single crochet. So go ahead and continue and work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the chain 2 space of each single crochet V-stitch across to the end of the row, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the end of my second row of our single crochet V-stitch border, so I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. Again, you put a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the chain 2 space of each one of those single crochet V-stitches across the row to the end. Use whichever method you prefer to fasten off. So here is what our little dress looks like at this point. So now all we have to do is crochet around our armholes. We're going to single crochet around our armholes, and then we're going to turn it over on the back, and we're going to single crochet up and down the back edging and then put our buttonholes in, and then all we have to do is trim it with white around the neckline. So now I'm going to switch back to my pink, and we're going to go ahead and work our edging around our armholes. So grab whichever color you used as the main color of your dress, and we'll get our armhole trim started. Now to do the armholes, I'm going to zoom up, but I have my dress laying with the front right side facing. So I'm just going to start in the right hand side armhole. It doesn't matter which one you start in because we're doing both of them the same way. So I'll show you how to do one armhole and then you can just go ahead and repeat to the other side. So we're going to go down to the bottom of our armhole. So when you hold your dress, this is the top. You want to come down to the first stitch on the right side of the bottom of the armhole. So let's zoom up and get started. So I already have my main color attached to my hook, and I'm just coming down here, and when you look at your armhole, you're going to have your 2 chains that we made for the armhole. Now this might be a little hard to see with all the stitches and the dress, but here is the first one, here is the second one. I'm going to join my yarn right into that first chain. Slip stitch through the chain and through my hook. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to take this end of my thread and hold it right against my work and work right over top of that and weave it in as I go. I'm going to insert back into that first chain where I join my yarn, and I'm going to work a single crochet. Let me bend this out of the way. It's a little hard to film when you have a little bit of bulk here. Insert into the next chain of the underarm on the armhole, work a single crochet. So now we're going to start working up the side of our dress in the row end stitches. So we're going to skip this part here where you see the 2 front loop sections where it's a double front loop. So we're going to skip this first row here, insert into the next row end stitch, work a single crochet. And we're just going to single crochet in each row end stitch and each stitch around. So when you're working on this portion, it's going to be row end stitches. And then when you get up here, it's going to switch to the back loop of those stitches. So this is pretty wide right here. It kind of separated and got loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down and I'm going to pick up both loops right here just to make sure that gets nice and secure. Work a single crochet. Then we're going to start working behind that trim work on the upper part of the armhole. We're just going to be working in the back loop of each stitch around the top of the armhole, and these back loops will be a little loose. And again, you're going right into each stitch, working a single crochet around the top of that armhole. And then once you get over, it's going to switch back to row end stitches. So let me just adjust my little dress. Again, the trim work is worked in the front loop, so you're actually working into the back loop of each stitch across the top of the armhole. And just keep moving your dress and adjusting as you go and work around that opening. So now again, you're going to come over to this section where it's going to have a big opening. When you get to this section, drop down and grab an extra loop down here. Work a single crochet. It just gives added strength and security to that stitch. We're going to go ahead and insert into that next row end stitch, work a single crochet. And now you're just going to single crochet in each row end stitch back down to your starting point. So I'm over to the last row end stitch. I'm just going to single crochet into that last row end stitch. And it is tricky if you're new to crocheting, trying to figure out where your stitches are. Now this is part of the skirt. So ignore this. You went into the last row end stitch. That is where you stop making your single crochet stitches, once you go into that last row end stitch. And then you're going to see your first single crochet right here. So you're just going to bring your hook over, insert under the top 2 loops, and then just pull tight on your yarn and bring that piece over and slip stitch into that first single crochet. It just pulls the dress together and brings it over where it needs to be. And then I'm just going to fasten off. So there, our armhole trim is made around our little dress. You can see it has a little bit nicer look to it with that finished edge. And then I'm just going to weave my yarn ends in on the wrong side of the dress. So then our trim comes back over, and then that is what it looks like. So now, since our first armhole trim is made around the armhole, you're just going to come over to your next armhole and repeat what we just did to the opposite side. So if you need help, just click back on the video. You're going to join your yarn into the first chain at the bottom of the armhole, and you're going to work from the first chain in each stitch and each row end stitch around. You work your last single crochet into that last row and then join with a slip stitch. So go ahead and click back on the video, repeat that to your second armhole, and I'll be back when I get my second armhole finished. So I just finished crocheting around my second armhole. Again, we just worked a single crochet in each stitch around both armhole openings to give it a more finished look. So now we only have 2 more things to do for crocheting. So you're going to turn your dress to the back where the back opening is. And again, please ignore all my ends. I'll weave everything in when I'm completely done. So what you want to do is lay your dress right side facing, and this is the back opening. So we're going to start up here on the right hand side in this very first row end stitch. So we're going to single crochet down each row end stitch, and you can just move your trim back and follow those row end stitches down. Now when you get to the top of the skirt, it's going to look like there's a couple stitches here. You're going to ignore this part. We're going to crochet down to this last row end stitch, and then we're going to come over and single crochet into the first row end stitch on the bottom, and then single crochet back up the left side of the opening, and then this will pull this little gather together. So I already have my main color attached to my hook, so whatever color that you used for the main portion of your dress, you want to use the same color so it blends in. And you're going up to this top right hand corner of the back opening. So I'm going to join my yarn right into that first row end stitch. I'm going to pull this strand of yarn forward, and then the piece left over from starting, I'm going to pull that over, and I'm just going to work over both of those ends, and I'm going to slip stitch my new color and join that main color. Yarn over the hook, pull through that first row end stitch, and pull through the loop on my hook. You're going to chain 1 to start the row. You're going to insert back into that same first row end stitch, work a single crochet. And then I like to just kind of pull on these and tighten that up. Insert into the next row end stitch, and if you're not sure, just follow those stitches down. Insert into the next row end stitch, work a single crochet. Single crochet into the next row end stitch. Single crochet into the next row end stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and work my single crochets in each row end stitch down the right hand side of my work. And when you get to this trim work, just go ahead and just pull that towards you out of the way, and then you can see your next row end stitch. So when you look at your work, we're only working to this last row end stitch here. Here's that double front loop that starts our skirt. So you're only going to this row end stitch above that. So when you look at your work, pay attention to where your row end stitches are. And again, we're going right into this last row end stitch right above those double front loop trim around the top of the skirt. So we have a couple rows to go. Single crochet into the next row end stitch. And then when you look at your work, you'll see here is the last row end stitch down the right hand side. So single crochet into that last row end stitch. So now what you want to do, you worked in the last row end stitch going down the right hand side. You're going to skip these stitches here, this gap, and then follow your 2 front loops over. You want to be above that, and you're going into that first row end stitch. Insert into the first row end stitch, work a single crochet. And what that does is it just pulls your work together. Insert into the next row end stitch, work a single crochet. And you're just going to work back up the left hand side of the dress, working 1 single crochet in each row end stitch going up the length of the dress. So I'm over to the last row end stitch, and I'm just going to single crochet into that last row end stitch. So you're going to have 12 stitches on both sides on the right hand side, and make sure you have the same amount of stitches on the left hand side. So now we're going to go ahead and chain 1, and you're going to turn your work, and now we're going to work from the left hand side back down and then back up the right hand side. So you're just turning your work. You're going to single crochet in each of the first 4 stitches. Insert under the top 2 loops of the first stitch, work a single crochet. That's 1. Single crochet into the next stitch. That's 2, single crochet into the next stitch. That's 3, and then single crochet into the next stitch, and that's 4. So now you want to determine how many buttons you want going down your back of your dress. So when we do the neck edging, we're going to put a buttonhole right here at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put a buttonhole in my next stitch. So to put a buttonhole, all we're going to do is chain 1, and we're going to skip that next stitch. You're going to insert into the next stitch, work a single crochet. That's our first buttonhole. And now I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to add 1 more buttonhole right here at the bottom. So chain 1, skip that next stitch, and single crochet into the next stitch, and that takes us to the bottom of that left hand side. So now I'm just going to finish by single crocheting in each of the remaining single crochet back up the other side. I have 1 more stitch on this side, and then I'm just going to single crochet in each stitch back up the other side. And you're going under the top 2 loops of each stitch. So insert under the top 2 loops of the next stitch, work a single crochet, and just continue working 1 single crochet in each stitch back up to the top on the right hand side. So I just worked in the last stitch. Again, we worked down the left side, made our buttonholes, and then worked back up the right side. So now, since I'm at the end of that row, I'm going to fasten off. So let's take one more little look at our dress. This is the front of the dress, and then when you turn it over, we just worked up and down the back edge of the neck. Please excuse all these ends. It's very distracting when you're looking at your work. So we work the back edging of our dress, and we'll attach our buttons after we get all of our crocheting done. So now all that's left to do on our dress is to take our white and put a beautiful white accent right around the top edging of our neck. So you're going to grab your accent color, whether it's white or a different color, and then I'll come back and we'll do our final trim around the neck edging. I have my white attached to my hook, and that's my accent color. So you want to make sure you're using the same color that you use for your accent. I have my dress right side facing, and we have the back opening. You want to be at the back opening. You're going to go to the left hand side of the back opening into the very top row end stitch. So when you look at your work, you're going to have 2 row end stitches and then your stitches. So I'm just going to join my new color right into that top row end stitch. And I'm going to join with a slip stitch through that stitch and through the loop on my hook. We're going to begin and chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this chain 4 is going to act as a buttonhole loop. So we're going to single crochet back into that same first row end stitch, and you can see how this makes a loop, and then we'll attach a button right to the top corner, and then you loop that over your button. So now all we have to do is work 1 single crochet in each row end stitch and then in each stitch around. So you just go into the bottom of the chain, because you're working in the foundation chain of when we started the top of the dress, and just work 1 single crochet in each chain and each row end stitch around. So go ahead and continue and work 1 single crochet in each chain and each row end stitch across until you get to the other side, and I'll meet you there. I'm over at the other side of my neck opening. I just worked 1 single crochet in each row end stitch and each stitch around the top of my little dress, and now I'm going to fasten off. And again, use whichever method you prefer. Now to finish your dress, you want to come back to the back opening of your dress, and you're going to take your loop and match it up right here in the top corner. You're going to sew your little button here, and then you're going to go down and find your buttonholes where you chained 1 for your buttonhole. So let me see right here is my first buttonhole. So just match it up to this side. You may want to put a pin or a stitch marker where your buttons are going to go, and then sew your buttons on the right hand side, matching them up to the little buttonhole. So that was the crochet tutorial for this basic little baby dress. Now it's time for you to put your own spin on this little dress by adding whatever accents you want, whether they're silk little flowers, ribbon flowers, lace, decals, maybe even some crocheted flowers. Maybe add some ribbon around the waistline. It's all up to you of what you want to do with this basic little dress. Thank you everybody for stopping by. I hope this video has got you inspired to try making your first baby dress. So until next time, happy crocheting everyone.